Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of Ask Mr. Tillandsia. Today I have some questions that I'm happy to try and answer. Number one is from Air Plants Decor. It's a YouTube. And the person says, I have a staghorn fern growing in a pot and I've had it for about 6 months. It's got new growth. Should I consider transferring it to a wall mount? And the answer is yes, if that's what you would like to do. You can take the plant out of the pot, you can mount it on a flat board and you can hang it. It's just whether you want to do it or not. If you do, it's relatively easy, but you need to know what you're doing. This is a Platycerium superbum, which is the one that grows into one giant moose head looking fern. And you can see it's mounted. What we did was we took the sphagnum moss, it was moist, we put it on the board, and we put the plant on. We used fishing line. We maybe had some little brads on the corners to wrap the fishing line around, and we went back and forth and tied it on. If you go over the shield fronds to tie it on, that's okay, because in the future it will put out new shield fronds back and forth to cover up the fishing line. We generally go underneath the shield frond so you don't see it from the start. But you can do this. We may have instructions on our website at rainforestflora.com, and you can check that out. And we're on to question number 2, which is from my friend Ian Cook in Australia. And Ian asks a really good question. What do you do when plant names get changed at the generic level? Plants that I have known as Tillandsia for the last 50 years have now been changed to something else. What do you do? In my case, I am going to continue to call them Tillandsias because that's what they are. You have in the taxonomy world, you have lumpers and you have splitters. Lumpers tend to put everything together, splitters want to split everything apart. I haven't done any research to learn why so many of the Tillandsias have now been changed to a new genus, but they have. And very possibly there are good reasons. Obviously, this is how these people make their livings. But there's a new genus now, and a number of the Tillandsia species have been changed into the new genus. My book is called Tillandsia. The plants are called Tillandsia. So we will continue to call them Tillandsia. And if somebody says, yes, but now it's genus such and such, then we'll say, okay, fine, it's genus such and such. And in our conversation, we'll call it genus such and such. But for the bigger air plant Tillandsia world, at this point in time, we're still just going to call them Tillandsias because they're air plants. I hope that works for you, Ian. Okay, Maria Garcia. How long have Tillandsias inhabited the earth? Well, I don't know for sure because I wasn't here when they started, and I don't know if anybody knows exactly how long, but I would guess around 10 million years. From the research I did many years ago, flowering plants came in some 60 million years ago, and the bromeliads started coming in about 10 million years ago. And I hope that is close to accurate. Jess Smith asks that in one of the videos we were creating a ball of ionantha with wire and then putting polypropylene netting over the wire. And he wants to know what kind of wire and is galvanized okay, and would that be safe because he soaks it periodically. And my answer for that would be yes, that should be fine. Any wire should work. The amount of whatever it is, whether it's galvanization or anything else, is very, very minute, and it's over a long period of time. If the wire gets really rusty, well, then some of that rust will flake off and drop onto the plants. Oh well. They should be fine. You blow them off or hose them off. But what you can do that's really cool is you can take, and what our guys did was they took a wire and they, a stiff wire, and they bent it in a circle this way, and maybe in a circle going around this way, and maybe one this way, and maybe one this way. And then they took this polypropylene netting with less than 1/4 of an inch, but not a lot less, little holes. And then they wrapped it around that sphere, and then they glued whatever Tillandsia on there, an inch or two apart, hang it up, let it grow for a couple years, it fills in, and you end up with this big ball that used to be right here. Oh, All right. So this is the big ball of Iantha a couple of years later. And you can see how it has filled in, and now the plants are so dense they probably appreciate being separated again. Which is another project. They may be glued 100 plants on there to start, and now there's probably close to 1,000.
And I'm sorry to interrupt. Paul, the whole point that you do this is to have airspace in the middle of the clump, right?
Well, yes, and you didn't have to wait 30 years for it to grow out from one plant. But yes, Barry, that's right. An advantage of having it like this is that it's hollow inside, so you don't really have to worry too much about the inside rotting out. All right, so give me a second. I'm going to climb up on my soapbox.
Careful.
And see if I can get this guy hung back up again. There. That should do it. At least temporarily. Okay. Another question. This was from Aaron Frost. What is the setup for a large collection of Tillandsias with regards to watering and placement? He says he has several different species and would like to know if he should split them up by xeric and mesic, or by species, or by native country. He assumes that different species would grow better together when cared for in a particular way, or can I just group them all in one display? Very good question there, Aaron. You know, if you have a continuum of dark and cool and more mesic, more wet on one side, and hotter and drier on the other side, and less humid, most all the Tillandsias will do really well from here to here. So you don't have to worry too much about over here or too much over here. Most plants will just overlap and do really well in here. So yes, you can group them by country, or you can group them by mesic and dry, you can, whatever you want. But if you have medium conditions and leaning pretty far either way, they'll all do fine. If you want to group your mesics together and they're in lower light, more moist and cooler, that's great. If you want to have your more trichome covered, fuzzier, stiffer leafed, more desert-like Tillandsias, you can have those on the drier end over here. But again, over in this middle area, they all crisscross, they all do fine. You can group them any way you want. And Sergey has a question. He said his Tillandsia has been watering for a long time with reverse osmosis water. Is that harmful? And no, it's not harmful at all. It's wonderful. Reverse osmosis, that's what we use at the nursery. Reverse osmosis water is water that is city water, and it gets pushed through membranes that filter out about 90% of any particulates in the water. So the water is much more pure, and if you lower the pH a little bit so that it's more around 6, 5.5 or 6 rather than 7, 8 or whatever that we have here, or what you might have where you are, that also is good. But reverse osmosis water is tremendous, and on a large scale, that's the cheapest way to have good water if your native city water is hard. Okay, you can use distilled water. People ask all the time, can I use distilled water? Or I use distilled water, and that's fine, except for the fact that distilled water is so pure that it will pull nutrients from the plant itself. So if you use distilled water, that's fine, but put a teeny pinch of fertilizer in there to put something in the water that balances out, so there isn't a deficit on the water side that pulls nutrients out of the plant to find its neutral position. If that makes sense. Hopefully it does. And that's it for the questions for today. And what I'd like to do is show you a couple of plants just real quickly. This plant is called Amazing Grace, and it's a hybrid of bulbosa and rosioscapa. And I noticed this morning that the one over here has cream-colored flowers, whereas this one has purple flowers. And with bulbosa and rosioscapa, you would think they would be more on the purple side, but the fact that they're cream-colored flowers is very interesting, and it just goes to show you never know. You just never know. This is a plant that's blooming that is not common at all. This is called Tillandsia horstii, and it has a beautiful red inflorescence with subgenus Anaplephytum flowers. You know that the hummingbird will stick its beak down in there, and it has a leaf a lot like a gardeneri, much thinner. It's not as wide, and it's a little stiffer, but the trichome covering is a lot like gardeneri. So maybe that's in the parentage back there somewhere. Who knows? Another interesting species is called deguetti, and this is a Tillandsia deguetti. It's a really beautiful, smaller Tillandsia. It looks a lot like Streptophila. I pulled up a Streptophila here so you can see that the shapes are very similar, but the deguetti never gets large like this. And these are plants we've grown, and they're just starting to flower. Very, very cute. And then I have 3 plants that are from Brazil, and the inflorescences are all very similar. This is a rare one called Tillandsia reclinata. Tillandsia geminiflora was more common, but there's so much demand for it that now it's not common. And another uncommon one here is called Tillandsia globosa, the smaller one on the end over here. But you can see that the inflorescences are all very similar. So there's a common lineage back there in the past, and now they're all different species. The foliage, the vegetative part of the plant, you can see is very different one from the other. So that's it for today, folks. Thank you for watching. You can visit our website at rainforestflora.com, Facebook Rainforest Flora, and our Instagram presence is growing and interesting, and lots of photos and interesting information there. So until we see you next time, goodbye, and that's it for now.
Rainforest Flora Incorporated